Pokemon gender ratios a lot of the time can be pretty weird. For the most part, each Pokemon's gender ratio does make perfect sense. For example, with Nidoking and Nidoqueen. Although it is quite questionable how Nidoqueen can't breed, but Nidoran female can. But instead of talking about Pokemon whose gender ratios do make sense, I'm going to do the opposite, by going through Pokemon whose gender ratios don't necessarily make no sense, but seem rather odd. To me anyway. Let's start with the Fennekin line. Off the bat, these foxes, especially Braixen and Delphox, do look quite feminine. This is perfectly fine, since their origins are in foxes and witches, with Braixen's name origin including Vixen, a female fox. The problem with this is, since Fennekin is a starter, it's 87.5% chance of being male. Why would something that's almost 90% chance of being male be based on something that's female? It's not even that bad that Fennekin has the chance of being male, since I could definitely see the Fennekin line being male, but being based on something that's female and then having the much higher chance of being male is kind of odd. What I think would make more sense is either have Fennekin be the first starter to have the higher chance of being female, or have the male version of the Fennekin line have the more wizard or warlock vibe. That would be pretty cool. Another Pokemon most people would assume to be more likely to be female at first glance is Gardevoir. However, Gardevoir's gender ratio isn't as odd as some people would think. Gardevoir's gender ratio is a 50-50 split, but Gardevoir's origins aren't specifically female. Its Japanese name translates out to Sir Knight, and its name may be a combination of guard and duty. Gardevoir resembles a principal dancer, which is a dancer that can be either male or female. I guess some people would confuse Gardevoir for being mostly female since it does have quite a feminine look, and that's definitely how the internet has taken Gardevoir. But for me, if I did have any problem with Gardevoir not being mainly female, it would be its Mega. Look at it! Would anyone expect a Pokemon like this to be male half the time? Its gown becomes longer and wider, resembling a bridal gown. Still think this Pokemon should be 50% male? Alright, now let's look at some more masculine Pokemon. There are some Pokemon that you can only get male, and for the most part they make sense. Gallade can only be male, the Hitmon line can only be male, Latios can only be male, the Machamp line can only be male, 75% of the time. Yeah, the fact that all Machops, Machokes and Machamps look the same no matter what gender they are, does seem quite odd to me. They are male most of the time, but they do seem like Pokemon that should be male all of the time. The line all have macho in their name origins, which has come to mean tough or masculine, and in Spanish and Portuguese, this means overly male. The line are also based on bodybuilders, but there are female bodybuilders. So if you're gonna have, say for example, a female Machamp, why not give it a slightly more feminine look? I'm not exactly saying draw breasts on it. Obviously all Pokemon designs have to be kid friendly, but there are plenty of times when a Pokemon's male and female forms differed quite a bit. This could have been the case with the Machamp line, or like I said, make them 100% male. Another Pokemon you would expect to be male most, if not all of the time, is Mr. Mime. Now for many of us, it has been brought to our attention that Mr. Mime is 50-50 on its gender, despite having Mr. in its name. But what I find funny is that Mr. Mime's pre-evolution Mime Jr. looks the opposite, looking like it's more female than male. Or maybe that's just me. I guess this in a way could balance out the gender ratio, having a more feminine Pokemon evolve into a more masculine Pokemon. And I don't see Game Freak having a Pokemon being one gender that changes gender when it evolves. Oh wait. Now some Pokemon, even though they may look more like one gender, are more likely to be the other, and in some cases, like with Delphox as I said, it makes a bit more sense, as Delphox is a starter, and all starters are 87.5% chance of being male. Sylveon looks more feminine than masculine, but it does make sense for Sylveon to be the same gender ratio as Delphox because it's an evolution, with Eevee also having the 87.5% chance of being male, but then for others, their gender ratio isn't as obvious. Snubbull and Gramble I've always found pretty weird that 3 times out of 4 it's female. If anything, I see it much more having an even gender ratio. Maybe their gender ratio is how it is, because Snubbull and Gramble's category type may reference the Kusith, a Celtic mythology, whose name literally translates out to dog fairy. So the fairy typing makes them more likely to be female? That doesn't really explain much. Especially when there are other fairies that have even lower chances of being female that look even more feminine than both Snubbull and Gramble. Mawile is a fairy that makes more sense to have Snubbull and Gramble's gender ratio, or even be 100% female, since it looks and acts a lot more like a female, and is based on the Futikuchi Onna, a two-mouthed woman. So I do see people finding Snubbull and Gramble's gender ratio along with Mawile's kind of strange, as well as some other fairies. Now to Snubbull and Gramble's credit, fairies are seen as very feminine creatures, and a good amount of fairy types have more female-oriented gender ratios. The Clefairy line are mostly female, the Jigglypuff line are mostly female, the Flabebe line are 100% female, the Togepi line are 87.5% chance of being female. Oh wait, sorry, my script was upside down for that one. Togepi's gender ratio is actually 87.5% chance of being male, not female. What? That's definitely interesting, in a very odd way. So the Togepi line is based on fairies and birds, with Togekiss having some inspiration from doves. They're also the only Pokemon with a 7:1 gender ratio to only be shown female in the anime. But why does it have the 7:1 gender ratio? If anything, its gender ratio probably should be 50-50. I mean, I would understand a bit more if it was more likely to be female, but to have such a high chance of being male just seems a bit out of place to me. I mean, the final stage is called Togekiss, not the manliest thing in the world. It's just really strange seeing that Machamp is more likely to be female than Togekiss, and Sylveon, and Delphox. That's just kind of weird. Maybe then, a fairy that's based on something that would be seen as female would have a more female likely gender. The Flabebe line are based on nymphs, which are minor female nature-based deities, which explains their female gender ratio. Aromates have traits of flamenco and cancang dancers, as well as being drawn similarly to how French dancers scandalously reveal their legs, which explain why Spritzy and Aromate's gender ratio is 50-50? They have the same chance of being male and female? Okay, this is what I don't get. Snubbull and Granbull have a 25-75 gender ratio, but Spritzy and Aromates are 50-50. So Spritzy and Aromates are also based on plague doctors, which may explains why they can be male. But why the overly feminine look? Spritzy and Aromates are also based on perfume bottles. Yeah, because guys use perfume just as much as girls. Honestly, if I had a Spritzy or an Aromates in real life and it turned out to be male, I think it would freak me out a little bit. Now, as we all know, all Pokemon aren't just male or female. There are also genderless Pokemon. Most legendaries are genderless, and other Pokemon like the Magnemite line, Porygon line, Metagross line are all genderless. Also, fun fact, Cryogonal, another genderless Pokemon, can learn the move Attract, the move that infatuates the opposing Pokemon if it's of the opposite gender. But if a genderless Pokemon like Cryogonal uses it, Attract will always fail. So why bother allowing it to learn Attract in the first place? Going back to genderless Pokemon, one Pokemon line I expected to be genderless was the Honedge line, but instead their gender ratio is 50-50. I don't know what other people think of this, but the fact that a sword can have a gender does seem pretty odd to me, especially when a magnet, a supercomputer and a cog doesn't have a gender. The Honedge line's gender ratio does make a bit more sense when you found out that they're based on magical swords possessed by a magical being, containing the soul of the user, so I guess their gender isn't that bad, but it does seem kind of odd to me for a sword, a man-made object, to have a gender. But you know what, if a set of keys also has a gender, I guess it's not the oddest gender ratio in the world. Alright, let's finish this episode with a game. I'm going to show some Pokemon that are either 100% male or 100% female, and you've got to guess what gender the Pokemon is. I'll also be playing along as well. So you ready? Frostlass. So it's female? Alright. Okay, so based on a well-known karate expert, looks like a dude in a karate outfit. So male? Okay, good. So it looks like a female, based on a stylized depiction of a young woman wearing gothic Lolita style clothing. The pre-evolutions also look very feminine, so it's female. The Gothitelle line have a 25% chance of being male? Gothita, Gotharita, and Gothitelle, 1 out of 4 times, are dudes. That doesn't make any sense! All the other female-looking Pokemon I talked about at least have something that shows it could get away with being male. These Pokemon have close to nothing. Who would look at this line of Pokemon and think, yeah, they could be male? Pretty much no one. Just imagine someone's reaction for seeing a male Gothitelle for the first time.
You think this is funny? Lad, Nintendo, you think this is bloody funny? Nah, man, I'm gonna boycott that Gothitelle line, innit? It can be a bloke. Nah, I ain't having it, mate. Next thing you'll be telling me is that Aromatisse can be a bloke, innit? Ain't that right, Spritzy?
Yeah, man. Oh!
Nah, that ain't cool, bro.
Idiot. So yeah, there are quite a lot of Pokemon that I and many other people will consider to have pretty odd gender ratios. Some are more understandable than others, and some just don't seem right at all. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed today's video. Please leave a like if you did, and subscribe if you'd like to see more Pokemon related videos in the future. And until next time, thanks so much for watching.